Hi, this is Bob. Again, I'm doing exam 77-882 Excel 2010 Core Test Prep Exam Requirements. I want to talk to you about the information we're going to study this time. We're going to be doing 5, which is applying formulas and functions. In this video, we're going to apply cell referencing formulas looking at relative and absolute referencing. So, in the previous video, we were looking at Polly's payroll report, and we noticed that Polly's payroll report had a gross pay column. In the last video, we actually entered every one of these gross pays in. We did Bob's gross pay, and then we did Mona's gross pay, and then we did Steve's gross pay, and on and on. It's not bad if you have 6 or 7. What if you had 600 or 700? Then it would be a pain. So if you do only the first formula, we do Bob's formula, we can easily get the answers to Mona's and Steve's and Diane's and Mindy's and Cameron's. We can get the answers to the rest of those real quick and real simple. Did you realize that when I'm on that formula, or actually when I'm on any cell, the lower right corner of the selected cell or the lower right corner of the active cell has a little box on it. If you take your mouse and put it on that box, your mouse turns into a little black plus sign. It's called the fill handle. Now, if you take that fill handle and you click and hold and you drag downwards, what happens is it will copy the formula and change it accordingly. So when you release it, you have Mona's and Steve's and Diane's and Mindy's and Cameron's gross pay. You don't have to do them individually. You do the first one and then you drag it down with the fill handle. Bam! They're all done. That is so cool. Now, what I want to do is to talk to you about why this is possible. And it's possible because of a term called relative referencing. What does that mean? Well, here's the definition. When a formula is copied, when you use the fill handle and you click and drag it down, that's called copying. That's one method of copying. When a formula is copied, the cell addresses, the B5, C7, A9, the cell addresses will change to reflect the correct row or column. Relative means change. You want to remember that. Relative means change. Now, take a peek here. Cell D4, that's Bob's cell. Cell D4 had the formula of equals B4 times C4. Okay, understand B4 was Bob's pay rate. C4 was Bob's hours. So I'm basically taking B4, Bob's pay rate, multiplying it by C4, which is Bob's hours. Notice this was typed in cell D4. Notice Bob is row 4. You see, I typed it in D4. Bob's pay rate is B4, and Bob's hours is B4, C4. So you notice that everything is row 4. Now, when I copied it down, look at cell D5. Now, that's Mona's cell. D5, the formula changed on us. The formula went from a B4 to a B5. And the formula changed cell C4 to a cell C5. When you copy the formula down, the formula cell addresses will change. That's called relative referencing. So Bob was row 4. Who was on row 5? That's Mona. Notice it says cell B5. Well, B5 is Mona's pay rate. C5, still 5, is Mona's hours. So it would just make sense to take B5 and C5, both on the 5th row, and multiply those together and put the formula in cell D5. You see how that works? See? So if it's in cell D4, we're multiplying B4 times C4. And if you're in D5, you're multiplying B5 times C5. The rows change. Okay? So with that in mind, what if we were going to do it to cell D6? What would the formula be? Now don't go back to your Excel spreadsheet. Don't do this formula and copy it down and take a look. Let's look at it together. See? So I'm going to go to cell D6. I believe that's Steve's row. What do you think the formula would be? Well, if you look at D4 and D5, it changed. The first address is B4, and it changed to B5. So don't you think it would change to, you got it, it would change to B6. And if you look at the second address, in row 4, it was a C4. And in row 5, it changed to a C5. So in row 6, it would change to a, you got it, C6. So B5 times C5 would change to equals B6 times C6. And there it is. Equals B6 times C6 for row 6. Because B6 is Steve's pay rate and C6 is Steve's hours. Do you see how easy this is? Relative referencing is awesome. If you use the fill handle to copy down the first formula, the rest of them just pop into place and they know what to do. Let's take a look at something though. I modified the spreadsheet and I added on row 3, I added a holiday bonus. The owner of the company decides they want to give a 4% bonus to every single employee as a holiday bonus. If you notice at the end, I'm on the bonus amount column, that is column E, and I need to calculate this. Well, I calculated by saying D6, because again, I'm on row 6. Row 6 is Bob. See that? Row 6 is Bob. So I'm taking Bob's gross pay, multiplying it by D3, which is the 4%. See? And that is how the formula works. But now, if I come back to this screen, and I'm on E6. E6 is considered Bob's bonus, right? That is D6, and look down the chart here. D6 is Bob's gross pay, and it's going to multiply by D3, and D3 is the, it's not Bob's bonus amount or bonus percentage. It is basically everybody's bonus percentage, you see. So it's just, I didn't put Bob there, it's just the bonus percentage that everybody gets, not just Bob. Bob gets 4%, Mona gets 4%, Steve gets 4%, on and on. If you take a look at it, I'm on row 7. Row 7 is Mona. The formula would be equals D6, would change to a D7. Remember how the rows change, right? And then D3 would change to a D4. Do you see this? Because relative referencing means we will change. Cell references will change. However, D4? Understand that D7 in the formula, D7 does show Bob's gross pay, but D4 doesn't show anything. It should be D3. That D4, which I highlighted and bolded and italicized and underlined, that should be a D3. That shouldn't be a D4. And yet, if you use relative referencing and you use the fill handle to copy it down, it will change to D4. It is wrong. It needs to be D3 as before. Take a look here. D7 is Mona's gross pay, and D4 is an empty cell. That's because relative referencing means it moves the cell address. And so since we were on Bob and we went one cell down to Mona, well, it's just likely understandable that we were on the 4%, we went down to the next line below it, which is wrong. The arrow points, we need that 4%. We have to use it no matter what. If you take a look at this, this is called absolute referencing. When a formula is copied, the cell address will not change. Okay, the cell address will not change. The cell will absolutely stay the same when copied from row to row to row or from column to column to column. Absolute means does not change. Okay, let's take a look at this now. So we found out that D4 is wrong, that D4 should really be a D3. We found that out. So I changed it back to a D3. D7 is Mona's gross pay, and D3 is the bonus amount. If I change and go to another row, now I'm looking at Steven's row. E8, Steve is on row 8. The formula should be D8 times D3, because D8 is Steve's gross pay, and D3 is the bonus amount. I'm explaining this in PowerPoint, but I will show this to you in Excel. You'll see what happens, because it just doesn't work the way you want. Now, when you do this, you have to use dollar signs. Dollar signs basically means that this is going to stay. This is absolute and it will stay. Every time you see a dollar sign in a formula, understand that that formula, that cell, when copied from one row to another or from one column to another, that cell will not change. It is glued in the formula. Pretend the dollar signs are glue in a way. So notice if I do copy it down, notice that the Mona's is D7 times D3. D3 again is the 4%. And Steve's is D8, which is his gross pay of $629 times D3. And then Diane's is D9, which is 760 times what? D3. You see, if there is no dollar sign, it is called relative referencing, and it will change. D6, D7, D8, D9. Relative referencing, it's changing. But when you have dollar signs, and you copy it down using the fill handle, they don't change. They stay the same. Absolute referencing. Relative referencing will change the cell address. Absolute referencing does not change the cell address. See, in this, I can actually go up to that 4% and change it to, 3% or 8%, and everybody's bonus will change. Let's go ahead and practice this in Excel. I'll show you what I mean. Here I am in Excel. I'm going to click on this very first formula right here, which is the gross pay. This is the gross pay of Bob. If I take a look at the formula, and I can do that by clicking up here, notice that it highlights Bob's rate and Bob's hours. You'll see Bob's rate in Bob's hours. So what that means is if I put my mouse in the lower right corner of that cell, and you always want to have one formula done. Put your mouse in the lower right corner of that cell. That's called the fill handle. Click and drag this down. When you release it, all the answers are different. Because if I look at the next one, and I go into editing mode, and I just double click a cell to go into editing mode, notice it's selecting Mona's rate and Mona's hours. I'm going to hit escape to get out of editing mode. I'm going to go down to the next one, double click to go into editing mode. Notice it is now Steve's rate and Steve's hours. Hit escape to get out. Every one of these is perfect. Now, let's look at the bonus amount. See, if I go into editing mode on this, you will notice it is taking Bob's $600 and it's multiplying it by 4%. So what would happen if I copy this down? I'm going to hit escape, put my mouse in the lower right corner, get the little black plus sign, the fill handle, drag it down. When I release it, a couple of weird things happen. One, I have tic-tac-toe signs. Basically, that means the column is not wide enough. You can put your mouse right here on the letter line between the E and the F. Click and drag that out a little bit. And you can see that number one, Mona doesn't get anything. And Diane, or Steve, and Steve, value, in other words, it's like I'm confused. I don't know what you're doing. Yet, Diane, Mindy, and Cameron are going to cash their checks and hightail it out of town because Diane made $760 and got a bonus of $456,000. Wow. If you make a mistake like this at work, you'd be looking for a new job. We have to fix the problem. So the first way to fix the problem is I need to get rid of all the bad ones. All of these that we just did are bad. You can just go one by one and hit delete. Go one by one and hit delete. I could do it all at once, but I don't know. I like doing it one by one. So I'm going to now double click on the formula. And you can see that there's a D6 right here. Now D6 is Bob's gross pay. You can see how it highlighted it. D3 is the 4%. I need to make D3 absolute. Now there are two ways of doing this. One way is to physically click before the D and put a dollar sign there, and then click before the 3 and put a dollar sign there. You see, you have to put a dollar sign in front of the column letter, and you put a dollar sign in front of the row number. I actually have a better way of doing this. What I do is I actually click right there between the D and the 3, and on my keyboard I hit the function F4 key, not the letter F and the number 4. If you look above your letters, there are numbers, and above the numbers are function keys. Hit the F4 one time, and there it is. You don't hold it down, otherwise you're going to get this. Okay? You would just press it one time, and the dollar signs flow in. Now hit enter. Click back on the correct cell, and you can look in the formula bar. The dollar signs are there. Put your mouse in the lower right corner on the little square to get your fill handle. Drag that down. Release it. Now they are all fitting perfectly. Now everybody gets a bonus. And if I want, I can come up here and say, you know what? That's too low of a bonus. Let's give them a better bonus. I'll give them 12%. So I'll just change that to 12. Hit enter, and every one of these have changed. This is called using absolute referencing. Whenever a cell has to be used in multiple formulas, that cell needs to be absolute when you are writing the formula. Alright, I hope that helps to understand relative and absolute. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.